Um, Mr. Chairman, it's a pleasure. You know, I've been here 11 years and I've never been to an ag committee meeting. Hey, you know where my heart is, Mr. Chairman. Um, hey, we got a full house here. Mr. Chairman, first of all, I want to make sure we're working off of. There's been several substitutes. And I want to make sure that we're working off all looking at the same substitute, which I would like to work off of. Some recent changes that were made. Be LC 400868S. Sir? You're correct, Mr. Chairman. I believe Ms. Pat may have a folder, may have copies. I don't know if we've got enough. Do we have copies, Ms. Pat? It's being handed out. Real briefly, there's been a lot of discussion about this bill and Georgia Soil and Water, and I'm gonna give a little bit of history. And there's basically three things that this bill does, and I'm gonna put them in buckets. One is it addresses some of the issues over the last 2 years. There's been some issues regarding zero-based budgeting that has been brought up. As you know, this General Assembly has passed that act, and every so often on rotation, agencies get looked at. So that's one issue. Second issue is some cleanup language just from existing code that's not needed. And then the third bucket would be some issues revolving around what everyone knows as the Green Book. Okay, very important. I want to stress this, very important in the state of Georgia. The Green Book is the manual at which at January 1 of every year is what tells everyone the minimum standards by which the erosion control products are, what Georgia Soil and Water sets as minimums. That's important because it ties into the EPD and the director's permits every year. So this is very, very serious stuff. And this bill seeks to, I guess, take those three buckets and what I think responsibly addresses each of these issues, and some of them are related, some of them are not, but it takes and it tries to responsibly address the issues at hand. Mr. Chairman, with that, I'm going to go through the bill. Lines 16, 17, 18. This is in regards to the, and I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, there's a lot of cords. I feel like I'm about to fall over on, put a computer up here. It addresses the issues with zero-based budgeting. There's been a lot of talk, especially in the governor's budget, about separating them. This bill is not, and I repeat, is not taking and splitting Georgia Soil and Water up. There was some talk about putting some in EPD and some in ag. It does not do that. It keeps Georgia Soil and Water whole. However, it takes and puts the administrative functions up under the Department of Ag. And in layman's terms, it's the back office. It's the HR and accounting purposes. I'll defer to some members in here from the Appropriations Committee, but my understanding is in researching this, it's a small agency, 30-something folks, and that we believe that there's some savings that could be addressed by simply letting ag take over some of the in-house operations, if you will, HR, accounting. In fact, Mr. Chairman, I know our Appropriations Chairman is on the committee. I think they've had some savings. We believe that we may be able to send some of these savings back into the districts, back at the local level where, at the local level, more resources are needed. They're operating on either little or shoestring budget. So we believe this is our very responsible move to administratively attach it. Second issue is, if you look at lines 19 through 26, this is addressing probably some of the issues regarding what happened this year in regards to what I believe was as well meaning as it was a direction that was taken by Georgia Soil and Water that, quite frankly, did not bode well for our environment. The seriousness in which Georgia takes its environmental responsibilities, keeping the waters of Georgia clean, and after much deliberation and talk, what we've done here is we've simply allowed that the governor will make appointments, as he has always done, and at this point he will make an appointment, one at-large member from each, I repeat, from each of the 5 soil and water conservation district regions to serve on the big commission. We believe that's going to, again, keep Georgia soil and water intact, but it's also going to make sure that we're picking and that the pool of folks who can serve on this board, we're not limiting ourselves, because, again, I want to make sure we all understand that while Georgia soil and water is also very interested in our rural and our ag part, it's also about the erosion control. And that's one of the main responsibilities of Georgia soil and water is the erosion. And we want to make sure that we've got the very best folks who have the background and understanding there. And we believe this is a responsible, flexible move that still keeps intact the districts, but it allows to make sure that we can go out and make sure we can pick the very most knowledgeable and the best folks who can handle these responsibilities. The next change in the bill, if you'll look on lines 92 through 96, this is some cleanup. Basically, my understanding is that this provision was put in under the Purdue administration, and this was an option for funding reservoirs. My understanding now from talking with some folks in the administration is that we're doing that in a different way. And basically, this is language that is not used and is no longer needed, and we're simply cleaning that up. Next change is Section 3, starting lines 104 through 110. This is going to address the issue that many of y'all heard with the issue with the Green Book. There's a lot of uncertainty, unclarity out there, and this provision was put in to make sure that we're really putting in the groundwork for what it is and some guiding overall principles to make sure everybody remembers what we're there for. It's basically saying that a manual for erosion sediment control means the published guidance of the commission governing decision and practices to be utilized, and it's going to be based on sound engineering and repeatable bench and field testing, and that it's also, we're going to have an approval process. Let me say this: Georgia Soil and Water is still the originator, still in charge of the Green Book. But there's going to be, as you see in lines 110, we're activating the Erosion Sediment Control Overview Council, which is going to have basically a final approval to approve any changes to the Green Book. This was a mechanism that I think was justified and put in to make sure that we have the very, very best manual in place, and some things that have happened this year do not happen again. With that, in Section 4, those are the changes to the manual. It says the manual, the publication. This is the part where it's talking about the council. This is not new language. This council existed. We're simply going to add to the function of it the final approval for the erosion and sediment control in Georgia prior to the publication. This council, as you can see, is made up of 9 members. I'll answer questions as far as the makeup if you want me to, but that this council shall meet prior to December 1 to approve the most current version, December 1/15, to approve the most current version of the manual, and at other times as necessary to approve any subsequent changes or updates to the manual prior to its implementation. So in other words, sometimes there's years that the manual does not change, and it would not necessitate this council meeting. And, Mr. Chairman, that's the bill.
necessarily a question, but just a couple of observations since the language is updating the board, if you will. I noticed on page 2 that several of these entities or organizations no longer exist, at least in the name that they're noted here. I think it might be desired to update that.
Representative Williams, there is a good point. This was brought to my attention this morning. We're still trying to make sure that I can document it, and what I'm going to suggest and ask is that this is something that we can a medial task, and apologize if there are any senators in here, but we can make sure we fix it on the Senate side as the clock is ticking. I'd like to get this over, but yes, we're in contact with the Department of and the University of Georgia, make sure that these titles and all reflect the positions as it currently stands. Yeah. So a great question, but I want to make sure that we have time to make sure we research all of these, document any changes in these entities, either their non-existence anymore or a change in title or who holds the authority for the functions that were put in at the time of the original legislation. Well, again, Mr. Chairman, we're keeping Georgian soil water intact, and of course we have the budget expert behind us, but they will be their own entity as it is. So I'm sure that they will continue to make budget requests as they see fit, and be autonomous in that regard. But it will probably just be that it's switched up under. You'll see it up under ag. And Mr. Chairman, if you'll correct me, it would just be in a different place in the budget up under ag, and it'll have its own section or line item there. That's the administratively attached portion of that. But let me repeat, and this is because there's been some consternation. They are autonomous. The Department of Ag will not control them, will not make any decisions. It is only for the administrative, the operations side of it, accounting, HR, that kind of thing. At large, and let me. It's a great question, a great point, but it goes back to my original point. You know, I'm sure this is going to be the first place that we look, is within these districts and to these supervisors, or within this pool that has traditionally been there. But what we're doing by opening up to at large is saying, hey, we can also consider, somebody outside of this traditional pool that we've had. Because we want to make sure we get the best folks who are knowledgeable, because these are very water issues and our erosion control issues. These are very, very important to the entire state, and I don't care if you're in Atlanta, Georgia, if you're in South Georgia. We want to make sure that we've got the most knowledgeable people who are on this board, who are making the decisions and policy decisions coming out of here.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Representative Knight. I want to take a couple of minutes to talk about a couple of issues that we have been discussing with Representative Knight about this bill. And while we do appreciate Representative Knight's willingness to meet with us, we do have a couple concerns with the bill. First issue is regarding the removal of the requirement of these 5 commission board members that are district supervisors. One of the main functions of the Georgia Soil and Water Conservation Commission is to serve and advance the goals of these 40 soil and water conservation districts that are located across the state. The districts are comprised of 370 elected and appointed supervisors in each district, with at least one elected and one appointed supervisor representing each county. The supervisors are unpaid volunteers, and they rely heavily upon the technical assistance and support of the Georgia Soil and Water Conservation Commission. So to ensure that the Commission continues to function in accordance with the goals and the functions of the districts, it is essential that the 5-member Commission Board be comprised of at least 3 district supervisors, if not all 5. The second concern, I'm sorry? Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Jason Alseth. I'm the Chattahoochee River Keeper. And I'm also a former employee in technical programs, technical programs specialist at the Georgia Soil and Water Conservation Commission. So I've been working on these issues for over 10 years. Yeah, and I apologize for that. The second concern is regarding the Manual for Erosion Sediment Control in Georgia, or commonly referred to as the Green Book, and who ultimately has the authority to approve this document. The Green Book sets the minimum specifications for products that are used during land disturbance and construction to prevent harmful sediment from washing into our waterways. And this is very important, as Representative Knight noted, because sedimentation running off of construction sites is one of the biggest sources of pollution and one of the harmest pollutants that goes into our rivers every year across the state. We must have a protective Green Book that embraces innovation and new technology and allows builders the ability to use the most protective products while they're developing construction sites to keep sediment from flowing into our waterways. Now, this bill proposes to remove the ultimate authority of approving the Green Book from the Commission and places it within this Erosion and Sediment Control Advisory Council. This council, we believe, is problematic because it is mainly comprised of individuals from Georgia Department of Transportation, the State Road and Tollway Authority, and private DOT contractors. And this creates a clear conflict because conflict of interest, as DOT and its contractors are the most heavily fined entity in the state of Georgia for erosion control violations. In addition, since the council is so heavily laden with roadway professionals, it is not representative of other industry professionals who are affected by the Green Book. Now, if we must remove authority of the Green Book from the Georgia Soil and Water Conservation Commission, we feel that the best solution would be to place this authority under the existing Stakeholder Advisory Board, which is also an active entity within the Erosion Sediment Control Act. Stakeholder Advisory Board is better suited to handle this authority because its members represent a much larger range of industry professionals and government agencies. The membership includes also individuals from Georgia Department of Transportation, as well as the Overview Council, but also includes representatives from EPD, the Commission, the districts, both city and county governments, the development community, utilities, engineers, the construction community, educators, and the environmental community. So placing this authority within the Stakeholder Advisory Board rather than the Overview Council will ensure that everybody is fairly represented throughout this process. We ask for your support with these amendments to address these two concerns. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Jeffrey Harvey with Georgia Farm Bureau. Mr. Chairman, I don't remember us having this type of turnout when the meetings were at 8 a.m. So it's a big crowd today. So yes, sir. Well, I'll be very brief. This is an issue that's very important to Farm Bureau. We've been actively involved with it ever since the governor's budget rolled out, and we were very concerned about dissolving the agency. This proposal, as the way we interpret it, will keep the agency intact. Granted, we would love to see it remain as it has been in years past, because Soil and Water provides valuable services to farmers and has since 1937. We'd rather it be the way it has been in the past, but apparently under administratively attached, the agency will still be able to advocate for their budget and operate under the guidance of a state board, and we think those things are very important. We appreciate Chairman Knight working with us, and Chairman Houston and Chairman Roberts as well, and trying to make these changes. Also, our members have expressed some concern about how the board is going to be established. We think the geographic appointments are very positive, but many of our folks have expressed concern about that, and we would like to continue to work with the chairman moving forward to see if we can further perfect that portion of the bill. And with that, Mr. Chairman, we appreciate the opportunity today.
Afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, and Chairman Knight. Appreciate the chance to visit real quickly. From my standpoint, I just had a couple of questions, if I could, Mr. Chairman, and see if I want to make sure that I understand things correctly too, because we've been talking for a couple of weeks. But for the benefit of the committee, and this is where I'm trying to figure out which way this thing's going. If it says administratively attached, for those of you, particularly those that we are thankful that work on our appropriations subcommittee, appropriations language in that regard affects us when it comes to the poultry diagnostic labs, the veterinary diagnostic laboratory in Tifton and in Athens, and the Georgia National Fair now. Those are administratively attached to us. But we serve only as a clearinghouse for them. So those dollars are appropriated, for their purpose. They submit their own information, and basically a check comes from OPB at random times, and we simply forward them for their own operation. And I know last year we did talk about HR and finance and some things of the way the thing was discussed. As we've talked this time, if you're talking about 38 people in an HR environment, just kind of doing the health insurance and those kind of things, those kinds of functions that's not a difficult thing. Our big challenge is on the finance side of this. There are lots of transactions. There are lots of staff requirements, even for a small agency. And so what I was trying to, I know we've said it kind of both ways, and I'm not exactly sure which. If administratively attached means that we're a pass-through, of course, we're going to be good to go with what you pass. So but the facts are, I'm thin on the finance side, and if it means us starting to pay all their bills and keep all their books, I hope we can come back during the appropriations process and discuss that, and we'll be happy to go either way. But I don't know. I'm familiar with their operations, and our CFO. We've begun to at least have some discussions about what a transition might take, what it might look like. But what I want to be careful of, you want us to do a good job, and we commit to you to do that. But there's a reason they have a finance group now, because they're working every day. And if that goes away, and that comes on top of, I hope that we could identify a little bit of resources to help us do that job. And so either way is, that's not our argument. It's just making sure we've got the tools to do it properly when the time comes. But I'll be happy, Mr. Chairman, that's, if anybody had another question, I'd love to try to. Thank you very much. Thanks, sir.
Well, just in closing to the members of the committee, I mean, there's been some points brought up, but I'd argue that first of all, I want to invite any one of you. Many of you, I've already shared some of the issues that were the technical issues that were behind some of what is probably the biggest issue that brought us here today, or one of the biggest issues that brought us here today. And I'll be happy. Anyone can come to me. I'll show you the documentation and folders and videos of what happened. But I first want to extend that invitation. If you don't know the full story, I'll be happy to share it with you. But guys, let me tell you, there's a lot of talk going into this about, again, busting this up, this agency up, and I think that the biggest issue is we've drawn back, we've acted with temperance, and we really haven't. Georgia Soil and Water is a very important agency, and I want to look you in the eye. We're not doing away with Georgia Soil and Water. It remains intact, all the way intact. They're on board, they're on council. And the function of creating, originating, and their current function over the Green Book stands. The only thing that we did was put in this oversight committee that is an approval. They can't make changes, they can only approve changes, and that was a check mechanism so that we didn't get into the issue of what we got into this year, which really, really jeopardized Georgia's rivers, our water. And so I would argue to you that this bill is simple, and I think it accomplishes what we need to accomplish without going and doing a lot of changing, because, again, a lot of functions under Georgia Soil and Water that quite frankly we all value. Second of all, to the commissioner, I know we have spoke the commissioner, and again, I think what the commissioner is saying is we're going to take up some operational duties. Just make sure y'all, if we need the staff or whatever to take some of those duties off, we're gonna make sure that he doesn't get saddled with the need of more staff or more something without some budget help. We continue to believe that there's a lot of savings there, and quite frankly, the ag would handle those functions, and there's none that follows that. So this will cause some cuts on the soil and water, but those functions will go to ag. So again, guys, we're only picking up some of these back office type stuff, and we'll make sure that the commissioner doesn't get unduly burdened from that perspective. So with that, I would ask for the Senate. We're going to ask the Senate to help fix some of those issues that Representative Williams. No, hold on a second now. I never made that big of a mistake, but Representative Williams brought up about the section of cleaning up some of the titles that were already in there. We'll ask for the Senate to help that. Mr. Chairman, I'll ask for this committee's approval so that we can get this through and make sure that we get this agency back to where it needs to be, making sure that our rural lands and the waterways are where they need to be. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is 450, House Bill 450. It's a LC 400833. And it's the only thing the changes are on line 49 through 52. And if you look at it, I didn't realize till I got to checking into some of the rules. I've been breaking the law because when we kill hogs, and I grind up sausage or cut up pork chops, I'm bad about bringing my secretary some so she'll be happy. And legally, because it wasn't inspected when we killed it, I can't even transport it, let alone give it away. So the law says the only thing you can do with that is either feed it to your immediate family, your employees, or a guest in your house. So for me to be able to give Pat sausage, she would have to come to my house and eat it. I can't sell it, and all this says is that if there is, it's drawn very narrow, if there is a face-to-face, in-person, point of sale made with the fellow that he has to grow it, slaughter it, and process it. It's real restrictive to how this can be done, and it has to be a in-person, face-to-face, arm's length transaction between two people. It's not getting into the grocery stores. It's not getting into the retail markets in any way. It's just on farm, face-to-face sales of meat products. You can do rabbits now, you can do chickens now, but you can't do swine, cattle, sheep, and alternative livestock, which is basically goats or llamas. If you take a notion, you might want to eat a llama, but anyway. And that's all this bill does. It just says it doesn't have to be inspected for arm's length transaction. And if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them. If you don't, I would love for you to think about voting for the bill. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Knowing your love of the white-tailed deer, would this bill cover deer meat if you were to kill one and want to give that away?
You can give it away, I think, because it is considered wildlife and it's not swine, sheep, cattle, or alternative livestock. But you can't sell it.
Can't sell it.
I do have a question. I guess on the farm, I know exactly what animals raised means, but we also got too many attorneys running around here. You don't have to calve out the calf and raise it from birth. It's animal raised. You buy some feeder steers or
Correct.
some barrows and raise them. You're okay with it. Still the weight.
Correct. At least that's what my intention would be. I don't. What the reason raised is put in there. I didn't mean for somebody to go to a stock barn and buy a hog that he has no idea what the origin of it is, at least for a certain period of time anyway, till you feed him out.
Buy a feeder pig
And raise him up and
make it feel real arms and
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, just wanted to verify, I'm a huge food safety person when it comes to vegetables, and we spend a lot of money to make sure they're safe.
right.
You did say this would be face-to-face, so there's no commercial
No.
sale at all?
No.
Nobody can take it and buy it individually and sell it?
No.
Cause any kind of problem?
No. And I'm with you on the food safety. The worst thing anybody could have happen, from you to me to anybody in the grocery business or the ag business, is an outbreak of some kind of food safety problem. And basically, if you trust your neighbor enough to buy a pound of sausage from him, then you ought to be able to buy your food, I think, wherever you want to buy it at. And I don't see this putting a hurt on the grocery store or anything. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman, I got this question. I'm the big farmer's market guy. Everybody knows that. So, in the in-person, face-to-face, does that have to be at my farm, or could it be at a farmer's market?
It has to be between the guy that did those three things and whoever the ultimate consumer is. But it doesn't. In order, if you ran a little country store, I couldn't sell it to you and then you turn around and sell it to one of your customers. I could sell it to one of your customers, but it would have to be between he and I. You follow what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
Any other questions, Mr. Chairman? All right, we have one person signed up to speak on this, Mr. Black.
Mr. Chair, well, it's hard. We've been running to here and there, y'all. I've been coming in and out of these buildings a long time, and I've heard the government give government answers a long time. I'm not going to give you a government answer. I'm going to tell you, because one thing that I absolutely agree with about giving stuff, and I don't know whether if that was the exact situation of being able to process something at home and can't give it away, that's ridiculous. I mean, I don't think that's an issue. There's a sale issue, y'all. There's a reason we inspect meat. We have the best meat inspection program in America. The reason we do is because that's what we have a great partnership with the USDA, and we inspect red meat. Have a couple of poultry folks where we have some. Most of poultry is USDA, but our concern with this is not infringing rights. It's not about because I'd love to fix the notion of giving stuff away if that's a problem. But the challenge comes with whether you're actually going to jeopardize a 50-50 partnership that we have where the federal government pays for half of our meat inspection program. And they do. And there's an issue called, our program has to be amenable with the feds, which means it has to be the same. And I'm not throwing up roadblocks. There is a lot of uncertainty about exactly. I can't tell you exactly what would happen. Because once again, I've come in these buildings time and time again, and in particular, every time we ever tried to get a weight change on a truck for bridges, our friends' first response sometimes we're going to have to post every bridge. Chairman Roberts, we've been through those. So I don't want to do that. But I would like, if you would, Mr. Chairman, allow State Veterinarian Dr. Cobb to talk a little bit about just our meat inspection program and how it works and what that relationship with the feds and some of the things that if we choose to do this, I think we can predict. There's some reasonable predictions of what will happen. And would you allow me to do that, Mr. Chairman? Dr. Cobb, would you come?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for this opportunity. As the Commissioner has said, that we have an equal to meat inspection program here in the state. And we were actually the very first state to have one ever. And we have the best one out there. Equal to means that FSIS, which is the Federal Meat Inspection Entity, requires us to do exactly the same thing that the federal inspection has done. And every year we go through audits with this program and so forth. Well, in order for us to be equal to, there are amenable species. Cows, pigs are two of the amenable species. And herein lies an issue with our feral swine that we're dealing with as well. But these amenable species fall under this equal to program. So if we allow a product to be sold without inspection, then we are no longer equal to the FSIS program, at which point they will basically shut our program down. We will not have a equal to program, which will mean that we're not allowed to inspect and ship product as we are now. We have three types of inspections that go on here in the state. We have federal inspected plants. Most of our poultry plants are federally inspected plants. We have state inspected plants. We have about 55 state inspected plants where we have state employees, and these are under a state inspection, and they can ship their product within the state. Federally inspected plants can ship their product anywhere in the world. And then we have something that we're one of a few within our country that we have a TA program. We have a very big TA program. About 55 also of TA plants are in the state. And these are federally inspected plants, but they're staffed by our state meat inspection employees.
And so this is a very good relationship that we have with the federal FSIS group. So I feel that if we're allowed to do anything that breaks the equal to status, it's going to jeopardize that with FSIS. As it stands now, no product is to be sold, given away to anybody unless it's inspected.
Yes, sir.
Philosophically, I'm having a hard time drawing a line in my own mind between giving it away and
Mm-hmm.
charging $2 for it.
Yeah.
From your point of view, philosophically, what is the difference?
Well, because you're in the business of, and there are lots of people in the business of meat, and meat is meat, and bad meat's bad meat. It doesn't make a difference where it came from. If a transaction, that'd be my philosophical answer to you.
Isn't the act of giving it away still a transaction?
Well, Dr. Cobb would say yes.
May I speak? I might have misspoke. Okay. What I mean by giving it away is donating the product. Okay. Donating the product, as in for free. You're giving it you're donating it to someone like whomever. It needs to be an inspected product. Now, that's what I meant by that.
So from the law's point of view, from the federal programs, the equal to part would even encompass that giving it away.
The donation of product.
But the commissioner doesn't have a problem necessarily with giving it away.
Yeah, but the question would come about what is the difference in donation? And I'm not, if you and I have because I've probably in violation of the same thing he is. If you had a neighbor that wanted a pound of hamburger meat, or what if you prepared it there? Was it in its raw state, or did you cook it at home? I mean, you can split that hair a lot of different ways. And it does say the preparation in one's home or something. I think it's in the law. But it's the business transaction, folks. We're in this regulatory environment that we have that is an important food safety responsibility. I think the question comes where if someone's going to do something for pay and have a transaction take place like that, that's generally been expected to be an inspected activity.
Why are rabbits okay in pork chops?
Well, that one's before my time. I learned of the rabbits before we got here. So, do you know what that is?
That is that'd be my answer too.
And that's not a terribly good answer, but that's the fact.
We're going to be consistent. You said meat is meat, bad meat is bad meat.
Yeah. Well, but I think you can also look at the agronomic importance of whether something's actually a commodity or not. And then I've just offended some rabbit producers, I'm sure, because they would consider that. But typically, when it comes into those amenable species, it's been pork and beef, goats in there. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman McCall. Before today, how much conversation was
Sydney had told me that they thought that it would mess with the equal to, and I'm not talking about selling the grocery store. I'm talking about simply face-to-face, in-person contact. My question to Gary and Dr. Carter, if I could ask them a question, has the feds told y'all this, or is this y'all's opinion on the equal to and the inspection, or?
No, I don't know if they've officially told us because we don't have we could submit that to them.
Officially, swine are amenable species, and amenable species officially apply to the equal to.
Just my question right along with Chairman McCall said, we're just guessing what the feds would do. How long would it take to get an opinion letter on this from USDA to tell us what they think they really would do, so we know what we're talking about?
Speak to what we reached out to FSIS last week when the bill was introduced, just to try to get some information. We don't have that. I don't know that we got a little paragraph, I think, that shot back in an email, but I don't know we actually have a formal stance.
We don't have a formal stance from them, but when we were directing, looking into allowing deer processors and whatnot to process feral swine, their response there was that yes, you can do that, provided the processors meet the sanitation standards that are required, meaning they become equal to. That's what that means. And so swine are an amenable species, whether it's a feral pig or whether it's a Yorkshire or whether it's in a commercial environment, so that if there are anything that is amenable, we're required to be equal to in the program. I mean, that's a given standard that we have to meet.
So if the farmer creates whatever he processes his own hog is equal to the standard required, then it's already okay.
Okay, now that there's several different options here. In other words, there's a carcass by carcass inspection, and this is what is allowed to be sold to the public. The animal has to arrive alive. The animal has to be inspected ante-mortem by the inspectors. After the animal is slaughtered, each and every carcass is inspected by the inspectors, and then that product is then able to be sold to the public. There's another type of inspection called custom exempt inspection. And custom exempt inspection would be the farmer who takes his own product to an approved inspected facility and they process it for him and he takes it back home. He can't sell it to anybody. It cannot be for sale. That's the two different inspections. And then there's the entity out there that is processing things that are not inspected at all, and that is your like your deer processors and all that, unless they are custom exempt also. Does that answer your question?
So if even though a custom exempt processor is approved, the farmer still can't go to that, take that carcass of beef or pork home and give some away or sell it to his neighbor. If he raises hogs, they raise cows, they trade back and forth, that still wouldn't be allowed, even though they're coming from an approved processor?
If I'm not mistaken, I'll try to. I can't quote the law exactly, but it basically says it can be used for in-house guests or non-paying guests, that kind of a thing. So if they're not exchanging monies, nobody's buying anything from anybody, then I would assume that those farmers could exchange. It's however you interpret the law.
I'm thinking about all the things in magazines and news, things I get on the internet, and different things like small-scale agriculture, etc. What Chairman McCall's proposing here is not different than what's done in a lot of places in the United States, from what I get. I mean, this face-to-face farmer to consumer sales, even in meat products, is not endangered other states cooperative treatment and funding. I don't think. I'd love to see.
I can't speak to the other states as much.
I think that's a big question here, because it seems like we're saying that if we enacted this, we'd have some potential loss of a cooperative payment from this. But I've seen this concept in other states, and it's not. I mean, maybe they're paying their whole vote. We're not. That's something that's a curiosity I have about this.
One more question. Are there any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
but I'm going to be short, not to bring anything to otherwise attention that's normal. Because as the chairman and I did briefly had a discussion, I have a committee meeting that is ongoing right now that I do need to get to as well. But I will be brief in regards to this, and hopefully I can move on and then come back to hopefully address any concerns. To the members of the committee, Mr. Chairman, Senate Bill 139 did pass the Senate, and obviously it is in your hands now in the House. Long story short, basically what this, in a very brief synopsis, this will rest the authority to regulate auxiliary containers in the state's hands. This is a good move from a business standpoint, from a regulatory standpoint. We regulate business on the state level, and we want to make sure that our businesses are equally regulated throughout the state. I think this is a perfect example of one of those issues in making sure that our businesses have equal regulation across the state, and we don't have a maze of regulatory environment in our state that they have in other states, because I think we would all agree that Georgia is a business-friendly state, that we want to make sure that we have the things in place that are not only good for our businesses but also good for our consumers. We don't want to pass those costs off to our consumers, and we want to make sure that our consumers have the ability to and access to items and goods that don't have increased costs because of unnecessary regulation. And we're just making sure that we have a statewide flat theme in regards to this particular issue, and making sure that we don't have a continual maze of regulation that could be a burden not only for our businesses, but would be a burden for our consumers as well. So that's, in a nutshell, that's the premise behind the legislation and where we are and why we're trying to move forward with it. And Mr. Chairman, I would, considering the fact I don't have much time as I need to get over to the committee, but I will yield for a few questions if I need to. GMA and ACCG have a not support recommendation for this particular legislation because their concern is in regards to the local control aspect of the legislation. But this isn't the first time we've done this as the General Assembly. A couple of years ago, I think it was 2007, House Bill 1303 passed. The legislature passed it. The governor signed it. That was in regards to nutritional information, and it took that control from the locals and rested in the state's hand as to how we regulate nutritional information in restaurants, etc. Because we were beginning to get a maze of regulation in regards to that issue as well. This is an example of we're basically doing the same thing and making sure that we're resting that authority in the state's hands. So it's not something that the legislature hadn't done before. That's correct.
Along the same questions, and I know I have a fireworks bill I'm working on.
I like fireworks.
So do I. I want to see
Boom, boom.
But I also want the cities to be able to create their own ordinances on the use. I can't imagine the city of Atlanta allowing somebody to fire off a mortar off a 14-story balcony. So as I play around with this bill and I substitute other products, it's not just bags, it's something else. And I agree with you. I think a city or local government creating an ordinance for bags and the use of bags would be harmful to business. But in a way, they have it at the local level. They have the ability to kick those people out of office if they don't like that plan, and also offer a competitive environment for business. So if the grocery store doesn't want to locate within the city limits, they can go to the unincorporated area and still serve this area. So using that as an analogy, how do we
That's a good question, Representative, and I think that would be it would be dependent on each and every issue. I think we have to look at each issue through a different set of glasses and through a different set of lenses, and in regards to that question and concern. I'll also say this, and you mentioned consumers. You know, in regards to these areas, and you know, if this legislation were to become law, and you brought up the consumers and the free market, et cetera, there's nothing to prohibit consumers and individuals, if they see it as a huge negative in regards to certain individuals continuing use of certain containers, that they could therefore bypass doing business at that particular store or grocery store or retail chain, et cetera. So we're not prohibiting the free market from taking place, and we're not prohibiting the free market from doing what it's supposed to do. But I think that I think in regards to your specific question, though, I think it would depend on the issue, and we have to look at each individual separately.
How many cities today are local governments contemplating?
I don't have a complete count, but I will say that I'm not going to name any names, but I am aware of 2 cities in 1 county, possibly another city, and you know, every day we hear of possibilities. Those are the ones that I'm aware of right now, and it's just in California they eventually got to the point to where they had almost 200 individual regulations in regards to this issue. The state legislature seen that as an issue, and they took it upon themselves to make sure that they fix that issue from a state standpoint to level it out across the state. I think if even though there's only a few that we're in response to right now, I think if it was continued, that there could be a possibility of numerous others. We have 536 cities, 159 counties. That's a lot of local governments. So I think there's a possibility that we could have much more than just the few that are contemplating it now.
One quick follow-up. What was California? California banned them altogether.
I think they did ban them, but they also had a 10-cent charge. They taxed some things too. Now, again, this rests the authority in the state's hands. So if the state legislature deems necessary moving forward that it needs to be banned, then that's the prerogative of the General Assembly, and that's our prerogative as the legislative branch. This is just saying that we have the authority to make that decision, and I would say that all of us, I would argue that we care as much for and making sure that our environment is protected as any local government throughout the state. I think the General Assembly does care for that. We put a lot of effort into that. We have laws that in regards to littering. We have laws in regards to a lot of those environmental protections issues, and I think that this doesn't prohibit us from doing that in the future. No.
Just quickly, there's 159 counties. Most all of them have speed limits, right?
That is correct.
When somebody drives a car too fast, we don't send the speeding ticket to the manufacturer of the car.
No, we don't.
And most counties have littering laws.
That is correct.
And if we'll enforce those, then the responsibility goes back to the person throwing the
It would be on the consumer, not the individual business. That is correct. Mr. Chairman, if I could slip out, if I don't have any other questions, I need to get to my other committee. And I'm not going to send you any junk, Mr. Chairman, I promise. Thank you much.
You just going to bring up the music like the Oscars and cut my mic? Thank you, Chairman McCall, and committee members for allowing me to make a few remarks, and I won't even stay for questions, so we'll let the rest of the 30 people who have something to say have that chance. But I am here because I am a native Georgian. I have lived in Atlanta. I have spent a tremendous amount of time on the coast. I've learned to surfboard there, learned to fish there, just learned to appreciate nature. And over the course of the years, I've seen the problems that plastic pollution has wreaked upon our beautiful coastline and the potential for harming wildlife, specifically turtles. And I know some of you are not into the turtle thing, but out of the 7 species around the world, 5 of them call the Georgia coast home. And they feed there and they come up to nest, and a couple of those species are endangered, and you know, we care a lot about those species. Now, as it relates to Tybee Island, I have a letter here from a city councilman. His name is Paul Wolf. He sent a letter, and he couldn't be here today, but he said that he pointed out a couple of things, and we do have copies for everybody, that the city of Tybee spends $600,000 annually to clean up the plastic litter and other trash. And that is a big burden. They don't get any money from the state. Also, ecotourism is a main source of economic, their economy. And so with all the plastic litter and the challenges it poses to sea turtles, which is a big part of their ecotourism, you know, Jekyll Island has a sea turtle center. A lot of families go there to recreate, and a lot of families participate in the many offerings of the Tybee Island, and you can see that up and down the coast of Georgia and South Carolina. But I think that the leadership in Tybee Island are contemplating what is good for their economy and for the animals that they share their community with. And I just think it would be good to allow them to make that decision based on their unique situation. So I would ask you all to don't vote no on House Bill 444. And I just want to say, you'll see my dad, Ted Turner, walking around here picking up a lot of plastic litter. Ted's Montana Grill, a shameless plug. We're 99% plastic free. We have paper bags. And last time I checked, the paper industry, the timber industry is second to agriculture in our state. And why the hell wouldn't we be investing in that industry and keep it local? So anyway, that's kind of my thing. Thank you very much.
I'm Kevin Jesselnick. I don't know who okay. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you to the chairman and the other representatives on this committee for hearing us out and considering our comments. My name is Kevin Jesselnick. I'm the staff attorney for Chattahoochee Riverkeeper, and I'm speaking on behalf of Chattahoochee Riverkeeper and the Georgia Water Coalition. So our comments are through the lens of protecting water quality in the Chattahoochee here in the metro area and across the state. We have 2 primary concerns with the bill. One of them relates to environmental impacts and stormwater controls. These plastic bags aren't really being recycled in the United States. You can have a sign there, one shopper, 1 year's 500 plastics bags being used. They're ending up in landfills, or if they're not ending up in landfills, they're ending up as litter on our streets and eventually into our stormwater management systems, and eventually into our rivers and streams, and just like across the streets, parking lots, and land here in our state. The end result is that we just end up with a lot of this plastic litter in our streams. in our Chattahoochee River here and the other rivers in the state. These can clog storm drains. They can impair and impede the function of stormwater management systems. And after heavy rains, you'll see hundreds of these bags along the banks and trees and in shrubs along the banks of rivers and streams in the water, impacting aquatic life, or just ruining aesthetic enjoyment of so many of our water bodies in the state. And that kind of ties into some of these local government considerations here. It seems like we believe that the local governments are in the best position to kind of take a look at their unique issues and concerns with stormwater control, with litter, with the water quality in the rivers and streams, and determine whether a prohibition on the use of these products is in their best interest or not. I think Ms. Turner-Seidel gave a wonderful example of the economic considerations that can come in at a local government level with ecotourism and other issues in Tybee. So I wouldn't dispute at all what the senator said, that the legislature here cares about environmental control and protection of the environment. The local governments do as well, and they have a lot of flexibility and maybe better ability to read and react to the situations that they're facing locally, and to make the best decisions for their constituents and for their own localized issues when it comes to this matter. And so we would kind of advocate that it be left to those local municipalities and county authorities. Thank you.
Okay, here we go. Can you guys hear me? All right. So, dear Mr. Chairman and the members of the House, thank you all for allowing my sister and I to come out here today. My name is Carter. I'm 14, and this is my sister Olivia, who's 12 and a half. And, yeah, I know. You have to put half in there. When you get older, you don't have to do that. I know. We started our own nonprofit back in 2009 called One More Generation in an effort to save endangered species and to clean up our environment for at least one more generation and beyond. Let me start by saying that in our homeschool program, we are taught to look out for bullies. And we should tell people who are grown up, who don't count halves, grown up, and tell the people if we see a bully so that they can help protect us from them, from our families and friends. And we just want to say that we see a bully coming into our state and trying to pass this bill. And we are hoping that you will protect us from their proposed harm. So I know that the bill was introduced as a way of preventing communities from passing ordinances on plastic bags, etc., but the issue is bigger than that. We could spend hours spouting out facts about the harms of plastic bags and plastic trash in general. And trust me when I say we could spout out facts for hours, because we've actually authored an award-winning week-long curriculum on the issue, which has been written to match the latest national and state standards for science. That's our dad, the bag monster. Our program is now available nationwide, and we have already introduced our curriculum in our first school in South Africa, and we will be in our first school in the UK and Australia in the next few months. Just like Miss Laura Turner said, I can't say a cuss word, so why the heck? Why the heck are we still having plastic bags? Sorry. Thank you.
So you see, we happen to know quite a lot on the subject of plastic pollution. And that's not the only reason why we're here. We're here to ask you for your help from bullies, and please protect our rights as citizens of Georgia to decide what is right for our community and not let others come in our state and tell us what to do. After all, you allow cities and communities to be trusted to make their own rules for Sunday alcohol sales, rules for licensing, zoning, fees, noise, signage, trash, and a host of other important decisions. But apparently, there are some who think Georgians are not smart enough or mature enough to address the issue that we are all facing regarding plastic bags and food containers. We have heard some people claim that banning plastic bags will hurt retailers. We beg to differ on this point. We have spoken with store managers and owners, and they say they could care less if they have to offer their customer plastic bags or they bring in their own reusable bags. The cost of plastic bags has already built up the prices of their groceries, and if the bags are banned, they will continue to keep the current prices and merely increase sales for the reusable bags, which already have a 100% markup, so the customer can do whatever they want. We understand that change is hard for anyone to accept, but ultimately, this is better for the economy. After all, who cleans up the plastic bags out of sewers, rivers, and oceans? It's taxpayer money. Anyway, thank you for your time today, and please don't let any outsiders come in and dictate what our cities should be allowed to decide. Please do your job and protect us from bullies. My brother and I are counting on your protection. Oh, and if you want to pass a bill that is something good for the entire state, why not pass a plastic bag ban while you're at it? I'm sure you will get more support than that instead of this bill. Thank you.
Yeah, I know. Some people stop counting at like 50.
It's hard to follow up after you guys. You're awesome. Greetings, Mr. Chairman and House Committee members. My name is Tiffany Eberhard. I'm a current resident of Athens, Clarke County. I'm a native Athenian. I've been there my whole life, and I plan to always call Georgia my home. I'm very proud to be from Georgia. I worked at the Athens, Clarke County Solid Waste Division, and I continue to be very involved in local recycling efforts in Athens. Plastics and other long-lasting materials are a modern marvel. I mean, we need them. They've advanced us in the medicine, in industry, and we wouldn't be where we are today without them. However, these materials have created huge waste management problems if not managed properly. Not to mention, plastic bags, styrofoam, and many other of these long-lasting products cannot be recycled in your normal recycling facility as otherwise noted by some people. They have to be brought to a special facility, which costs a lot of money and are the #1 contaminant in our local recycling facility. Athens is the smallest county in Georgia, yet we are one of the most populated. We generate uniquely large amounts of waste. About 300 tons per day ends up in our landfill. And we generate this from our university, our downtown industry, not to mention our football games that bring in tens of thousands of people, or I should say dog fans. And Athens has been working for years to encourage recycling in order to reduce our landfill waste because our landfill space is limited and has an expiration date. However, if House Bill 444 is passed as written, a lot of these efforts will be squandered. This bill could strip Athens, Clarke County from the right of deciding the fate of our own solid waste. It would prohibit county governments from regulating any auxiliary containers. It's not about whether our county should pass a plastic bag fee or not, but whether we have the right as local citizens to make waste management decisions on our own. I've spoken with Athens, Clarke County solid waste employees and people who work there, and they say this bill is not to their benefit. It would interfere with our county's reduction goals of landfill waste. Our goals are 60% by 2018 and 75% by 2020. Our recycling program is very well established and generates profits and jobs for our local economy. I'm concerned, along with the majority of Athens, Clarke County commissioners and hundreds of Athens, Clarke County citizens, that this bill would negatively affect our county's ability to determine our own environmental and economic future. Each county in our state deals with unique waste management issues, And for the general law to set statewide limitations, I feel like would be a defeat to local county rights. It's for this reason I urge you to defeat this bill. Thank you.
Members of the Agriculture and Consumer Affairs Committee, my name is Landon Bubb. I'm from Athens, Georgia. I'm an intern at the Athens Farmers Market. Georgia Organics, my market ambassador, store manager of Ben & Jerry's in Athens. And so I live in Athens, and I'm the first member of my family to be born and raised in Georgia. I'm a recent graduate from UGA and was awarded the 2014 Most Outstanding Undergrad in Sustainability. I care deeply about giving back and defending the future of my state and my baby nephew. He has his first birthday next week, and I'm really excited. It's gentleman's themed. I come representing hundreds of concerned citizens in Athens who care about the success of both our vibrant businesses and our rich natural resources. My southern upbringing taught me to be a good steward of our great earth. For 2 years, I lived a mere block from the Oconee River in Athens, and on my way home from classes at UGA, I would often stop by the banks and retrieve a stray plastic bag, red Solo cup, a soda bottle. And after a certain point, I realized the constant source of pollution is nearly a symptom of a much greater problem that we're failing to address. Our society is proving that it cares more about convenience than long-term economic and environmental well-being. And I pray that you disagree with this. I know that this committee of all groups can understand the importance of supporting localized community efforts. There is legislation that supports economic success and businesses while also reducing our dependency on plastics. And it also baffles me that this bill is being proposed so soon after groundbreaking research from the University of Georgia's own Dr. Jenna Jambeck. About a week or two ago, she was published in the journal Science with findings that estimated 8 million tons of plastics entering our oceans annually. That's 8 million. And in response to this, we should be promoting sustainable innovation, not regressive policy. Because if that plastic doesn't go away, it affects our fisheries, coastal tourism, and community health. I also wanted to reference a few lines from the bill itself. Lines 18 to 21. I feel the confusion of different regulations hasn't affected how consumers interact with differing smoking laws. You can smoke inside in some areas, in some counties, and not inside in others. Sunday alcohol sales, the past year, I feel counties have seamlessly adopted to that. And then different agriculture regulations depending on the county. And then also lines 16 to 17, the language in House Bill 444 stating that fees and bans hurt the bottom line of grocers, retailers, and businesses is simply untrue. In places where the fees and bans have been put in place, grocery stores and retailers actually lobbied for the businesses. And I know that in Washington, D.C., in the first month after they passed their 5-cent fee, they raised $150,000 for the Anacostia River cleanup while raising business to cover the cost of bags for the businesses. And I strongly feel that in order to protect the natural resources that promote tourism, business, and recreation, we need localized legislation that gets to the root of local problems. House Bill 444 has gotten to the root of the problem, but I strongly believe it to be in the favor of the wrong side. I urge you to vote in support of local control that fits local needs and oppose this bill. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. Thanks for allowing me this opportunity to speak. My name is Ashley Workman, and I'm a resident of Tybee Island, Georgia. My roots are grounded as deep as time in this state, and I feel certain that my ancestors who still sleep in this soil would be saddened to know that our government could turn their backs on our fragile environment. Tybee Island is a very unique city to Georgia and is one of only a few coastal cities in the entire state. Though Tybee may only be a 3-mile-long island with 3,000 residents, it boasts over 30,000 visitors a year during our tourist season. We are also a very popular nesting site for loggerhead sea turtles, all of which are endangered and single-use plastic bags being a major contribution to this sad news. The America for Plastic Bags Coalition would have us believe that recycling plastic bags is a better option for our environment rather than removing them from the equation. But this is simply just not true. Single-use plastic bags cannot be recycled through our community's single-stream recycling program due to high costs associated with machine jams, and in fact our city has lost revenue due to this misconception. I cannot speak for the needs of every other community within the state, but Tybee is an island surrounded by water, and which is our greatest resource, and our economy is dependent upon its health. If this wasn't a problem, it wouldn't be an issue. This bill does not address any of the environmental concerns for which we are all here today, and it completely undermines the efforts our local municipality has put forth in trying to keep our area clean. Please do not take away our right to protect our most precious asset and preserve our coastline for future generations. This is all of our mess, and will only worsen if we do not minimize our contribution to the pollution. Please vote no on HB 444 and be heroes to the state and the ocean. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Mark Woodall. I'm the chairman of the Legislative Committee of the Sierra Club with about 50,000 members and supporters in Georgia. So we're here to oppose this legislation. As some of the speakers have mentioned, we don't think that preemption of local governments should be done without some sort of compelling state interest, and I don't really see any compelling state interest involved here. And I think cities and counties are now responsible for managing over 10 million tons a year of garbage, some of which is recycled and some of which is not. So it seems to me that if they can handle over 10 million tons a year, that they can handle a few plastic bags. One thing I'm sure of, I've been to California. We are a California outfit, and this is not California. It's pretty clear to me that we don't have any problems with the regulatory mayhem around here that I've ever seen. And I think we ought to be consistent. I was looking here at what Senator Harper has sponsored, Senate Bill 91, which is local option for counties to allow the sale of beer and wine for off-premises consumption within 100 yards of a school. So if we're going to have local option for sale of beer and wine within 100 yards of a school, it seems like we ought to have local option for control of plastic bags. We do think there's a compelling state interest and national interest in the reduction of fossil fuel use. If we could cut oil use by another 3 million barrels a day, then we wouldn't have to buy any oil from OPEC. So we think the best thing to do with the fossil fuel use for plastic bags and the natural gas is to put it into transportation uses. As we heard earlier, there's no natural gas or oil produced in Georgia, but we do have over 24 million acres of pine timberland, so if we want to promote something, it would be paper bags made in Georgia. And fourthly, since we're the Sierra Club, I should mention that it's bad for wildlife, as you heard, turtles and so forth. So thank you for the time.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Committee. It's nice to be here today. I appreciate your time. I'm here. My name is Polly Sattler, and I'm here as one of the founding directors of an organization that was called Green Plate. And our focus was on raising awareness about the issues of disposable plastic, particularly single-use plastic. So there are issues that are environmental, social, and financial sustainability. In the oceans, I think many of you have heard of the Pacific gyre. That's something that's been bantered around in this conversation. Well, there are gyres. There are 5 of them around the world. It's where the currents come together, and it's a big mixing pot. And so the Pacific gyre is the one that has been studied, where all the currents are coming together. And there's a group, ag030215EDITED Foundation, that has been researching and going out in boats and looking. In 2001, there was a plastic to plankton ratio of 6 to 1. They went back in 2008, it was 28 to 1. So they're pulling up in the water, they're finding 28 pieces of plastic to 1 piece of plankton. It's an impact on the oceans. Also, there's a group, the Ocean Conservancy, that's been hosting and sponsoring coastal cleanups since 1986. Volunteers from around the world go and do the cleanups. They're looking at the trash, they're counting the trash. In 2007, plastic bags were identified as the 4th most common debris found in the oceans. In 2010, the bags have moved to 2nd place, comprising 11% of the total waste. It's growing. So litter, it's a worldwide problem. We've had litter programs in the U.S. since 1970. I'm sure y'all all remember the crying Indian. I do. Litter still accumulates today. And interestingly, because of the molecular makeup of plastic bags, the plastic does not break down in the environment, making plastic more of an issue for litter than paper bags. In addition to the visual litter, plastic bags have been known to clog drains and cause flooding. In Bangladesh, do y'all remember that really big flood that killed thousands of people? They found it was because the storm drains had been blocked and it caused devastation. So, and then also the bags, as they are lying around, you see them all the time. They're flying in the trees, they're in, on the ground. They're collecting water. It's causing mosquitoes. We're having issues with mosquito illness. It's another impact. Litter impact, that has a pickup. That's a financial. That's affecting your communities and your counties and the state. In 2010, according to the City of Atlanta's compliance manager, the city swept more than 23 miles of streets and collected 934 tons of debris. According to Keep Georgia Beautiful's website, DOT is paying for the removal of litter on more than 1,200 miles of interstate, and it goes on and on. So we are already paying for litter control, mosquito control, waste disposal, and other impacts, and all of which bags contribute to this. There are impacts on jobs. I know everybody is concerned about that. We can talk about that at some point, but there are companies in Georgia that deal with plastic. There are almost as many who are making reusable bags. There are jobs on either side of this, so this is not, if we ban plastic bags, we're losing jobs, because there are other economic development opportunities. And finally, I'm sure we just heard today that California has over 200 jurisdictions that have bag bans. That started because San Francisco wanted to put in a bag fee. The Plastics and the Chemical Council came into the legislature, passed the bill that said no communities would be allowed to put fees on plastic bags. Hence, the communities started putting in bag bans and fees on paper bags. In hindsight, they may have been better with the fee-based program. Unfortunately, I believe here in Georgia that many states, special interest groups like the Chemical and Plastic Council are lobbying to influence the path forward. It is highly distressing to me. Is that like 3 minutes total or 30 more seconds? It's distressing to me that these outside interest groups are potentially dictating how local communities are run and impacting the process to their benefit at the expense of local communities and your citizens. I ask you, please do not pass this bill out of committee. There are many aspects for consideration that have not been reviewed: the impact of disposable bags, the impact on communities for zero waste going forward as a composting option, and whether communities should be banning or perhaps putting fees. These are things that need to be discussed. I hope you all will not pass this and have more of a discussion and review of this issue. Thank you so much for your time, and I apologize for running over.
I'll be short to make up for Polly. So my name is Jeanette Gear. I'm the Director of Environment Georgia. I don't want to repeat what's already been said, but I think I wanted to emphasize what Polly actually brought up, which is we've had litter programs since the early 70s, and we clearly still have a litter problem. And that litter problem is costing our communities a lot of money. So I think it's the Justice Brandeis quote that states are the laboratories of democracy. And I think cities and counties are really the ground floor of that laboratory. So the idea that we would hold those cities back from experimenting with what we are finding around the country are good ways to deal with this litter problem, good ways to deal with the cost of that litter problem, is outrageous to me. So would encourage you again to not vote on this legislation, to I think of some of these really big concerns that have been brought up. And Mark said it kind of tongue-in-cheek, but Georgia is not California, and I think the reality that we had two places that had very unique situations that they are grappling with, that people felt they needed to take time away from work to come down to the legislature in the middle of the day, really speaks to these two places and how much people really care about this issue. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for considering this really important issue, and urge you to vote no. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Ed Painter. I'm a resident of Dalton, Whitfield County. I'm a businessman there. And I wanted to come down after I read the bill Saturday to be in opposition to it. I did write a few things here, but I think I can put it down in a nutshell. It's about local control, and I consider myself an activist and keep up with these things. And we all understand that, I'm sure everyone on the committee agrees with me, that local control is vitally important to the function of our government. So we're not in a disagreement with that, and that the state has the power to decide what is overriding state interest to take that local control away. Along with that power goes the obligation to prevent an abuse of that power. And just cutting this to the chase, I think that everyone on here knows what some of us out there have found out by reading the bill, that this is one of those instances where this is to benefit special interest at the expense of local control. That's the bottom line. And I won't go any further. I thank you, and if there's any questions.
Mr. Painter, you're well known in North Georgia as a major conservative activist in your community.
Yes.
You're not exactly attacking this from, no offense to the Californian, from a West Coast perspective, liberal agenda. You're attacking this from a conservative principle position.
If I were standing in front of one of the Tea Parties that I'm a member of up there, no offense, I would say I'm not with the left-wing loons. No, my concern is simple. And as a businessman, in the last 25 years, we use tens of thousands of bags. We currently use paper at our choice. But that's our choice, and I would fight the local government, unless they came up with some good reason, to force us to use it, or to force my competitors to use it. This is principle. I'm hoping that y'all see it that way and vote on what I see as one of the clearest bills I've seen on as far as principle of local control goes. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Catherine Fleming, and I'm with the Georgia Municipal Association. We represent 521 municipal governments, so 99% of Georgia's cities, and I thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on this bill this afternoon. The question was asked was, where was the line? Where is the compelling state interest in terms of this bill? The Georgia Municipal Association, we would argue that this is really a local issue that should be argued at the local level. That shouldn't be before this committee, that if businesses feel strongly that there shouldn't be a plastic bag ban, then that should be an argument taken up with the city of Tybee, and that it should be fought there at the local level. We strongly believe that our local elected officials are in the best position to make decisions on these sorts of very hyper-local issues. If a city such as Tybee wants to be able to ban plastic bags, then that should be their decision to make. Furthermore, in the current vision of the bill, there have been efforts to make sure that our recycling programs are exempted from this regulation. The bill states curbside recycling. Well, after talking with some different city officials, curbside really only means residential recycling programs. So we have serious concerns that this bill would jeopardize any commercial recycling programs and ordinances that our cities may have. I don't want to repeat what everyone else has said. At the end of the day, we feel like this is a local issue. We oppose the bill, and we strongly appreciate your vote no on it. Thank you.
It's all right. I'm used to it. I'm married into it, but I'll stick with it. I'm Terry Anulowitz, and I am on the City of Smyrna City Council. I'm in my second term. I am here because when I heard about this bill, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, and all the members of the committee for the opportunity to come here today and talk to you. My concern and what sticks in my craw with this bill is the local control issue. There are a lot of issues that the state does need to go ahead and take the regulation end of. Things like soil and water conservation, things like stream buffers. There are a lot of things that are left to municipalities and to counties. Those are things like tree ordinances, things like Sunday alcohol sales, things like whether or not we even sell alcohol in our community. We have the ability to make those decisions, and it has not been a regulatory nightmare for the people who sell those products in the state of Georgia. If we want to ban pancakes in our community, we should have the ability to take a vote and ban pancakes. If the people in my constituency oppose that, they can vote me out of office. We're not having a conversation in the city of Smyrna about plastic bags right now. That really hasn't entered a dialogue. My issue is not with plastic bags. My issue is with local control. My issue is with the state legislature telling me what I can regulate in my community and what I cannot regulate in my community. And again, overarching things like water conservation, like stormwater, like soil management, I absolutely agree. That needs to come from the state level. If we're going to get into the minutia of plastic bags as an issue that the state can tell me what I can do with my community with regard to that little minutia issue, I don't know where it's going to stop. I don't think this is going to be a hardship for businesses if a community decides to ban plastic bags. I think different communities have different compelling interests for why they might choose to ban anything. And again, that's why I think this goes down to the issue of local control. I think that Representative Turner's analogy of fireworks is apt, because if fireworks do become legal in the state of Georgia, then that is something that communities will need to address. It's something that I'll probably talk to my fire chiefs about. I'll probably talk to neighborhood associations about. But that's a decision that's going to be made at a local level. It's a decision that should be made at a local level. Something like a plastic ban is something that should also be made at a local level. And I would appreciate that the legislature would continue to give me, in my role, the autonomy to make decisions like whether or not we decide to ban anything in our community. Thank you.
Good day, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Todd Edwards with the Association of County Commissioners of Georgia. There's been a lot stated today about local control, home rule, and the positions or that should be taken at the local level as opposed to statewide. I need not go over those again. I think it is a home rule decision best made by the local governments, by those who are elected and are accountable to those citizens that in their local communities on what is best. Questions were asked earlier, how many cities and counties have adopted such ordinances on plastic bags? I know of none. I know it's been discussed in a few of our counties. I think, frankly, that when these proposals come to them, that these folks, the county commissioners, are elected to make these tough decisions. So far, they haven't gone there, but I do think that they should be held, responsible for making the decisions. I also want to point out that that is one discussion we're having here. All the discussion so far has been on plastic bags and whether or not, and this is a state policy position, I understand that, but whether or not we should ban plastic bags. But also, what is not being discussed so much is perhaps the unintended consequences of this bill. I want to thank Senator Harper over on the Senate side for adding a couple of provisions that would protect local government recycling programs. Catherine from Georgia Municipal Association shared one that we're frankly hearing from our counties right now, is that we would like to include commercial recycling under the bill. I believe it's subsection C that covers curbside and drop-off recycling. And second, if counties or cities or school districts sponsor events or have activities within their own property, I think that local governments should reserve the right to ban glass containers from their swimming pools, from their beaches, or any other property that they own. And I'll give you an example: a festival in a county park, county beach, etc. And they want to do environmentally friendly, kind of like Waste Management's, for you PGA fans, Waste Management's Phoenix Open out there in Arizona. Why shouldn't a county or a city have a right to sponsor such events and say what kind of containers are used at those events? So overall, ACCG opposes this bill because we believe the ban on plastic bags is usurping local control. There were certain other provisions mentioned at the beginning of this meeting, and for those of you legislators that sponsored bills that dealt with animal husbandry, I remain the same then. We opposed them. I may have lost, but at least we stood our ground and held that it should be decided at the local level. Second, I think, are the unintended consequences that we need to address going forward, so that this bill adheres to what the sporters, to my fellow lobbyists that claim this is about plastic bags, to ensure that that's all it is, and it doesn't impact local government recycling or events on our own property. With that, Mr. Chairman, I thank you for your consideration, and I will be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Michael Power, and I'm with the Georgia Chemistry Council. It appears that I'm the icebreaker in today's conversation. The business of chemistry in Georgia employs nearly 20,000 Georgia residents. Some have said this morning that this issue is not about Georgia jobs. It is. Dart, Container, and Pactiv here in Georgia have over 5 locations and employ more than 12,000 Georgians. They manufacture polystyrene cups, utensils, and a number of other products that we use in our day-to-day lives. When we see local government looking to seek to ban or tax these products, it really starts to create a patchwork of issues. We haven't really seen this issue much in Georgia. We've seen it in Tybee, and a few other local governments have discussed it. But California really created a significant challenge for our businesses to operate. And so because of that, when we see a state like Georgia looking to do some of these things, we think it is beneficial to kind of get ahead of the curve. So we support Senate Bill 139 as well as House Bill 444. Before I go, though, I would like to say there's been some things raised and some other comments about the recyclability of these things. Are they toxic? Bags are not toxic. They're highly recyclable. Since 2005, plastic film recycling rates have increased 74%. Since last year, 11%. Every grocery store, or not every, almost every grocery store in the state provides film recycling at their store. So when you bring your products home, it's super convenient. You're going back to buy more groceries. You can put that film back in the bin at the front of the store. Then those grocery stores are so kind, they bring it back to a centralized location where it's then collected to be recycled at a facility that can handle that material. Some of our companies manufacture the resins, others manufacture the bags themselves. They take that material and make a new bag. There's a company called Trex that makes a great decking product that lasts for 75 years and has a lot of very environmental benefits. So I've kind of touched on a couple things here. What else I want to hit on real quick? There is a program everyone can go look at. It's called bagslife.com. It makes it really, really easy. You can go and look to see what stores offer recycling near you. You just plug in your zip code and it'll give you all the options. So with that, I will say please vote yes on Senate Bill 139 as well as House Bill 444, and I will leave for some questions.
How many bag monsters do I need to make a deck?
How many bag monsters do you need to make a deck? That is a good question. I don't have that answer. I apologize for that. But it is a great reuse. Any other questions? All right.
Chairman, I'm not Karen Bremer. Yeah, obviously, thank you. She had to step out across the street, but my name is Ryan Costigan, and I'm with the Georgia Restaurant Association. And on behalf of the 17,000 restaurants across the state, we have a system here and a program called Zero Waste Zone that we started a few years back, and it's intended to reduce waste, become more sustainable as a restaurant, and we support the industry in that effort. Nationally, the National Restaurant Association has a Conserve program, which does the same thing, and the first national office for this program is actually housed in our offices right up the street. To say that we don't support the effort of what everyone else has spoken for is completely false. However, we are of the different belief when it comes to state by or county by county, municipality by municipality, particularly in this state where there are so many to make the decision. We do ask that you do support it on a state level so that it can be researched and addressed properly going forward. Thank you. Sure. That's a great point. We support that exact question. It's difficult. I'll use personally for me. I live in East Atlanta, so for those that are familiar, I'm in DeKalb County, but I'm in the city of Atlanta, right? So I'm right on the border of Moreland Avenue. We actually have a restaurant member, more than one, that have restaurants that float on both sides. This would be a prime example. Say if Atlanta or Fulton County or DeKalb County decided to and the other didn't, it would cause absolute setbacks, extra costs to manage those two businesses. So. We agree.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, appreciate your time, and I'll be as brief as I possibly can. I'm the executive director. I'm John Poole, the executive director of the Georgia Paper and Forest Products Association. It's been said up here today that our industry would stand to benefit from a plastic bag ban, and perhaps that's true. But product bans are an intrusion on free markets, and we typically do not support those kind of intrusions. This one is particularly troublesome to us because of the point that's been raised. We've got 600 or 700 political jurisdictions that would have the ability to pass any number of different regulations, which would be very troublesome, especially for small business, for a lot of our customers. So we are supportive of the bill, and we urge you to pass the bill because we think it makes sense for this to rest with the state. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay.
I got one question for you. I appreciate you being here. It's my understanding, and maybe you know or not, that because of the makeup of the fiber and paper, we still figure on about three times we want to recycle it twice before it breaks down and really isn't viable for recycling after that.
On paper?
On paper.
That's probably true, but by that time, too, it's probably also very easily disposable. It's pretty much gone by then. The fibers are not going to last beyond that, and they are biodegradable, of course. Anything else? Thank you, sir.
I had first planned not to quote statistics, but just to tell y'all that I had a note from one of my garden club members down in South Georgia in Gerald Green's district, and she said, "Tally, why are we discussing this? Why aren't we just banning the bags statewide?" Which had been our state president's one of her initiatives in the last 2 years. I'm sorry to say our President Suzanne Wheeler died on Saturday from cancer, but that had been one of her main initiatives was ban the bag, and I didn't bring up, but I have my bag that I take with me to the grocery store and other places that's real easy to carry. Thank you. So, see, this is our advertisement. But what I just read, and I haven't had time to research it, is that China has put up a green wall, and they are no longer accepting our plastics to recycle. And they were the main recyclers so far that I had heard. Now, the industry will have more statistics on that, but I think that's something that we have to consider. Maybe they're not going to be going into the deck plates. But thank you. That was all I wanted to say, except it would be a good idea not to pass this bill, please, because I do think there needs to be more discussion. Thank you.
I've got a touch of laryngitis, so bear with me. I'm standing in for Kathy Kuzawa. My name is Sheila Humberstone. I'm with Stonebridge Consulting, here in front of you today on behalf of the Georgia Food Industry Association. Food Industry Association represents your grocery stores, your large chain grocery stores, and your little mom and pops in your communities. All of us love our local grocery stores. We are extraordinarily supportive of this bill, and we are very supportive of the underlying desire that's been very well articulated by so many people ahead of me that litterism is a really big problem. This bill is not going to change what people do with plastic bags. If we have a problem with plastic bags on the beach, then let's go after the bags on the beach. Let's not hurt the local business who happens to reside on one side of this county line versus the other. When we create a patchwork of regulations like that, we're picking winners and losers. We're telling the owner on one side of the street that's regulated by one set of rules that they can't have a bag or a cup or a can, and on the other side they can't. This is more than just bags. We're picking winners and losers here when we do it in small way. If this is meaningful reforms are warranted, then we think the appropriate place for those meaningful reforms is at the state level, where we can have that conversation and make sure that all of our business community, all of our grocery stores, all of our retailers, all of our restaurants, that everybody is sort of speaking the same language and working together to fight the problem. But fighting a littering problem by banning a plastic bag that I take home my groceries with, or that I take home my Chick-fil-A with, or whatever, is not the right mechanism to prevent littering. And certainly we don't know where the bags come when they wash up offshore. We don't know that they're not coming from across the Atlantic or across the Pacific. So we don't want to be like California. California does have a patchwork of regulations, 5 cents here, 10 cents here, 20 cents here, flat ban, tax on even paper bags. That creates, and it's a real challenge for the individual resident who's trying to figure out what they need to bring with them or where they're going to go to get their groceries that day when they're traveling. So we would encourage you to vote for this bill. Generally, we're for local control as well, but there are some places that it's just not warranted, where a statewide approach really is the prudent choice. With that, I'll take any questions. Yes, sir. I have talked to him about some amendments, if you... Yes, sir. He said it would be at the discretion of the committee whether or not y'all wanted to bring him up or not. Yeah, I think certainly the desire was not to impact the recycling programs that are done on the county level that aren't impacting the commercial folks. So we had thought that we addressed that on the Senate side. If we haven't addressed that adequately, we would add on D, after designated residential, we would say or commercial recycling locations. That might be one way to offer a bit of relief to our local folks. If only. Oh, I'd have fun for one day, and then y'all kick me out of here. It is, and the second one as well. Yes, sir. I mean, I certainly don't like to speak for a legislator, but would you like to see it? Never.
I'd like to offer on line under D, at the end, other designated residential or commercial recycling locations. Other designated residential or commercial recycling locations.
Thank you.
Line 30. Line 30. After or. Other designated residential or commercial recycling locations.
The other says program. I think Chairman Roberts is saying locations, but you might want to add programs as well as locations to the municipal. To commercial, just to cover the whole gamut of what you might do.
So there's a full sentence now read on D, J, nothing in this code section shall be construed to prohibit or limit any county or municipal curbside recycling program or other designated residential or commercial recycling location.
Correct.
Okay, so it goes after right there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that code. Okay.
And that's the first one.
Second.
Let me read one more time. Everybody got it?
Y'all all know what we're talking about. You making a motion on this?
I am making a motion to adjourn.
Second. All those in favor, aye.
up as a rule for business, then why are we okay with it when it's their property? I mean, it seems like we're not, the scales aren't even there. We're not using it the same weight and measure.
The whole deal behind it, retail,
I think where this came from was from the county government representatives who suggested that there are times that you have festivals and that on their they might want to have a fun run or a festival for a finite period of time where they have it and I probably can't use the term correctly, but trash free or impact free. And so we were thinking about putting it in for a period of a week or a day, and we just said if it's something that they're doing, just like the local business should have the opportunity to decide whether or not they want to give you plastic or paper or neither, that the local governments, if they're hosting an event on their property, that they should be afforded that same opportunity.
One of the things I struggle with down here is when different concepts collide. You know, we, as a conservative in government, one of the things that I often get asked about, especially on the school choice issue, is wouldn't it be better if it's local control? And you know, I'm a strong proponent of school choice because I think that's an individual right thing. So I had to establish in my own mind a hierarchy of principles to kind of govern my actions while I'm down here. I don't necessarily think a ban on bags and statewide program would be a good idea. I want to clarify that. I think it hurts business, but I also have to look at the Constitution as my first and foremost. I do believe the Constitution does allow us, in this case, to regulate this as an industry. But the next thing I always look at is whether or not something violates an individual liberty. I don't think this does violate that, but I also take into account good government, transparent government. I don't think this violates that. But the last thing that I always look at is local control. I definitely think this is a bill that strips local control. Every individual community has their own challenges. They have their own values. They have their own problems that they have to deal with in their own unique ways. And I think that we are, by passing this bill, removing a tool from their toolbox to deal with their own unique problems. And that's really all I have to say. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Person had a discussion this afternoon on both sides of the issue. The question I've got, Mr. Chairman, and I would just pose openly, and anyone who has spoken or anyone, even on this committee or in the audience, can respond. The question I've got is, if this bill were not to pass and local governments had the ability to regulate on a local basis everything that's listed here, plastic bags and whatnot, is there any empirical data that anyone has that says if the state of Georgia allows local governments to do it as they see fit at the local level, at the end of the day, does that really have any impact on the environment or the amount of plastics that are in our waterways and elsewhere? question, does anybody have any evidence or insight that a hodgepodge, if you will, my term, anyone else's, with local control really makes a difference? What is that you demonstrate? No, I'm just asking you, if you don't think they can answer that, you might go.
I represent Chattanooga River Keeper, and every year our organization cleans up approximately 20 tons of trash in our streams and creeks. And if those plastic bags and those one-time use cups and containers were not there, then we would be put out of business in the trash cleanup area. Every year, about 20 tons of trash, and that's all done by volunteers. In our 20 years of history, we've removed over 800 tons of trash from the Chattanooga River Basin. The vast majority is trash bags, plastic bottles, soda cans, one-time use material. If that material was not left on the street, on the curb, and didn't wash down the storm drain, then yes, we would have a huge impact, and there would not be that litter.
Hi, Mr. Chairman, I'm sitting here from a background of local government. When we talk about local control, this could create the biggest problem local control has ever faced in their life. Now, what we hear about, most of the testimony we've heard today is plastic bags. Suppose my city decided to ban plastic bags, and the next city decided it would be styrofoam cups, the next city decided, and as Jay said, we get a mishmash of different laws, and I don't think approaching this particular problem from the local level is the way we need to approach it. Now, I'm not saying I don't agree we've got a problem, but approaching from the local level is going to put your local officials in one big dilemma. And I guarantee you from past experience, I think the biggest problem I ever had was when I had a city councilman cut down a tree to build a tennis court for the kids in the city park. And those types of issues are so inflammatory at the local level that I think we will put our cities and counties in a bad position if we allow each one to decide which products and which products not to cover and what should be banned and what shouldn't be banned and what should be taxed. I think that's the wrong approach. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't think we need some solutions, but I think that is the wrong solution. And that's the main thing I've heard against this, is local control. I don't think that, seriously, our local people would want this control, because your cities or your population is going to be split dramatically, and it's going to cause a lot of local problems. The other little thing that I talk about in my experiences in local government is we had Meals on Wheels. I don't know if we banned these containers, how we would have delivered these things to our elderly people, and without creating some type of plastic or styrofoam problem. So, I mean, that's just just my take on it. Thank you.
Just quickly, Carter and Olivia, thank you for your words. I'm always blown away when young people come up here in front of this overwhelming group of people and speak. So regardless of what happens on this piece of legislation, thank you, thank all of you. But local control, and I mentioned this, you have local control, and it's an enforcement issue. You have litter laws that you can enforce, and a lot of times, whether it's at the local level or the state level, you want to legislate control. You don't legislate control in either area most of the time if you already have laws on the book that just need to be enforced. And I know the Sierra Club guy mentioned a while ago they had 50,000 members. I've been in grocery stores all over the East. I've never seen a Sierra Club member at one of these grocery stores asking me to please stop using plastic bags and giving me a reusable bag. So I'm just saying there's other ways. There's peaceful assembly. You can protest these grocery stores or whatever you do that use these containers and ask them to quit using them in your areas. But it's complicated to sit up here, as he said, when you have all the different local governments passing different laws. It would be a nightmare. It would be really hard to allow them to all do different regulations.
Anybody else got any more
22 and 23, we spend a lot of time hearing about bags, and we're talking about all auxiliary containers, and cloth, paper, plastic, every bit of it. And when you start opening the door up to everything out there like that, I think it's causing problems. With that, Mr. Chairman, unless you object, I move to pass. As a